Hello everybody and welcome back to the semifinals here at GP Providence. I'm Gabby Sparks, joined today by Luis Scott Vargas, and our first semifinal match is going to be Osyp Lebedowicz versus Wang Yichen. The matchup is Red White Vehicles versus Black Green Delirium. Luis, give us a rundown. What do you expect in this match?
I expect Osyp to try to close out the game before Wang's more powerful deck really does come into play, because it's really hard to win a long game against Emrakul, the Promised End, and Ishkana Graf Widow is, the kind of card that really kind of gets the black-green deck to that point in the game.
All right, let's see how fast and how furious Osyp can go. We're going to kick things off with a veteran motorist, and Wang just a couple of lands and nothing else.
You know, I've been overall disappointed by how few Fast and the Furious references we've made over the course of the broadcast, so I'm glad you're trying to pick it up near the end here.
Got to pick up the slack. Somebody's got to. All right, so it looks like Depala coming down for Osyp.
Oh, wow. This is a huge turn. Osyp played Depala, hit for 4, and Wang doesn't have a Grasp of Darkness. Oh. Okay.
So he does have one.
All right, well, I had assumed he didn't have one because he took 4 off the veteran motorist, but I guess here we are.
All right, so he's going to follow that up with a Liliana the Last Hope, and that's going to finish off the veteran motorist. So even though he was able to get in for 4 points of damage, no board presence at this time. And we've seen what happens a lot of times with red-white vehicles when they're facing off against an active Liliana, and it's not pretty.
No, Liliana has done a lot of work over the course of this tournament, and picking off veteran motorist is chief among that. Just like Selfless Spirit, veteran motorist, Toolcraft Exemplar, those are all cards that just get devoured by Liliana.
All right, so Smuggler's Copter, not exactly going to get devoured by Liliana here, and hoping to be one of the ways that Osyp can actually take down that Liliana in some upcoming turns. Liliana continuing to tick up. Now up to 5. We're going to see a Tireless Tracker and the land. All right, so Harness Lightning will take care of the Tireless Tracker. Wang does manage to get a clue out of that exchange, though.
And this turn's going to be big. If Osyp has a way to pilot that Smuggler's Copter, which a pretty good chance that he does, you can hit Liliana for 3, take her down to 2, get to go loot with the Smuggler's Copter, and that all works out fairly well. Copter does play well against Liliana, even if a lot of the other cards in Osyp's deck don't.
Mm-hmm. Copter just generally plays really well against killing planeswalkers, as we've seen.
Also opponents, also like pretty good against creatures. It's just a great card.
It's just a great card. All right, so it looks like we might have a pilot here in the form of Depala.
That'd be an optimal pilot, too, getting extra damage through with the Copter and potentially getting to use her ability right away.
Yep, so he is going to go ahead and tap 1. So Depala is crewing that. Oh, unfortunately, it's a mountain, so no more cards for Osyp. Osyp bashing with that Smuggler's Copter. This drops Liliana down to 1.
It also, if Osyp wants, gives him opportunity to discard something like Toolcraft Exemplar, which does die to Liliana, though he may have enough lands that he doesn't need that either.
So Osyp still deciding what he wants to discard here.
And it looks like Tireless Tracker didn't make a clue. I mean, that is a trigger you can miss, but we'll see whether or not Wang indicated he was getting the clue or not, but it is
possible for him to miss it.
It is certainly within the rules to miss your own triggered ability.
That's unfortunate too. That's one of the main reasons why you play Tireless Tracker.
It actually did look like he pointed to it though, and Osyp responded with Harness Lightning, so he didn't forget. So we'll go ahead and have one of the judges investigate that.
Well, to finish that turn, Osyp is going to discard a Plains. I'm going to pass the turn back to Wang.
So you are allowed to miss your triggers, but by pointing at Tireless Tracker, one interpretation would be, I'm getting a clue, hold on, I want to respond, and then at the end of that, yeah. So there we are. So Wang, in fact, does have a clue, and is going to be able to sacrifice it later for value.
All right, so Liliana continuing to tick up, targeting that Depala this time and to the slaughter.
Oh, did he use the die to indicate the clue that Osyp used it for energy?
Yes.
I'm sure that was inadvertent. That's a real smooth move.
All right, that to the slaughter takes care of that Depala, and Osyp once again without any pilots.
And I did spot a Toolcraft Exemplar in hand, but the problem with that is if Osyp goes for Toolcraft Exemplar, attack Liliana with my Smuggler's Copter, and then Wang has Grasp to kill the Copter before attacks, all of a sudden Liliana gets to pick off Toolcraft Exemplar, and Wang ends up in a very good position.
Well, that's certainly a scary attack, but he is going to go ahead and go for it. Wang is representing the Grasp of Darkness. Osyp gets 2 loot. Discarding a mountain. Let's see. It actually manages to connect and takes down that Liliana, so this is huge for Osyp.
Oh yeah, that's a very big swing, because instead of having a Liliana, no Toolcraft Exemplar, no Smuggler's Copter, Osyp just has it all, and Liliana's in the graveyard.
It does look like one has drawn an Ishkana for this turn, though.
And with Grasp of Darkness, Tireless Tracker, and Liliana in the graveyard, he's 3 out of 4 of the types needed for Delirium.
All right, well, a follow-up backup Liliana, if you may, for Wang does manage to take down that Toolcraft Exemplar.
That is a good follow-up, and Liliana has been doing some good work here. Osyp also, not a ton of cards in his hand. He didn't hit off Depala. He got 2 creatures killed by Liliana, so and having the second Smuggler's Copter in this position, unless he draws something like PNLR, it's going to be a while before he can use the backup Copter.
Oh, it looks like the Needle Spires is going to attack the Liliana herself. So that takes care of that Liliana, but unfortunately for Osyp, he wasn't able to cast anything this turn either.
Needle Spires is a great card, and taking out Liliana there. I mean, Osyp at this point can figure out that Wang doesn't have a Murder or Grasp of Darkness in hand, so going for the Liliana wasn't that risky. But had Wang had one of those cards, like maybe drawn off that clue, then Osyp would have been in a really tough spot.
Well, Wang is not doing anything this turn. It seems like he's passing back to Osyp. Yep, and then we see the motion.
And so Wang is unwilling to play Ishkana without Delirium, which makes sense. I mean, you get so much more value when you get the 3 spiders. But if he doesn't have an instant to play here, he's going to need something to get himself closer to Delirium.
So it looks like the Needle Spires is getting activated so that it can crew the Smuggler's Copter, which is going to allow him to loot this turn as well.
Somewhat circuitous route to crewing your vehicle. I just can't even understand what, like, one lands, get into vehicles. Like that's
at that point, you're just not asking questions. You just go ahead, you smile and say, all right, that works.
Well, also, it's just not my job to ask questions.
All right. Fair enough. So Vessel of Nascency here, revealing a Tireless Tracker there for Wang, and that is going to be the choice.
Also, critically getting him towards Delirium.
Mm-hmm. Now Ishkana makes an appearance, and this time with Delirium online, she brings the whole family.
Reach in action.
That was a really good discussion, by the way, and it actually kept going for quite a bit of time after we discussed it on air, too.
Yeah, the discussion that we're referring to is earlier whether Reach, when you talk about a deck having Reach, whether that means burn, a plan for the long game, or the ability to block flyers. And basically the main takeaway is that Ishkana provides all of those things.
The only thing that everybody can agree on in this discussion is that Ishkana is all 3.
Yes.
Nothing else.
And speaking of Ishkana, look, those 2 Smuggler's Copters having to stay back. Ishkana is just dominating the board here.
And look, now that Ishkana has come down to the Tireless Tracker.
With the exact same
sequence. But this time the clue actually does come in immediately.
I was really hoping.
It would have been really funny if it didn't.
that actually would have been unreal. But the Tireless Tracker, once again, trading for Harness Lightning and getting a clue means that Wang still in pretty good shape. He got a 2-for-1 there. I mean, he would have rather Tireless Tracker lived, sure, but given the circumstances, this worked out.
And so now if you're Osyp, what are you thinking? What is the way that you actually get out of the situation? Because this Ishkana is always just going to be blocking you. Sculptors can't do anything here unless they get some sort of bonus from like Depala or Veteran Motorist. Even then, it's not great.
Osyp really needs to find Declaration in stone. That would be one of his ways to punch through Ishkana. Something like Fleet Wheel Cruiser would also give him that option. And if he can crew both his copters, Depala making 2 4/4 attackers could get him there too. Osyp also could crew a copter just to get a loot. If his card in his hand is a land, it's not ideal, but attacking with a copter in order to exchange your land for hopefully something better is not unfathomable.
All right, so Wang taking the opportunity to draw a card.
And Declaration in Stone, exactly what Osyp is hoping to draw, but does not have access to quite yet. Also, thanks to the extra couple energy. As someone points out, Harness Lightning now becoming an out as well. Osyp only has 2 in his deck, though, and so he is unlikely to draw the third. Though he does have enough energy.
It looks like Sylvan Advocate might have made an appearance for Wang.
Yeah, and that's a card that we haven't seen much in this tournament. In fact, that's the first time I've seen one in play, and it used to be one of the most played standard cards. So it's kind of interesting how cards rotate in and out of playability despite, being legal throughout the course of the tournament.
It looks good right now, though.
Oh, it looks great. It's going to make these Hissing Quagmires into 4/4s. It's a 4/5 for 2 mana. It can help Wang start to pressure Osyp, because even though Wang is stabilized right now, he does want to try to finish the game before Osyp finds a declaration and starts attacking with those copters.
And it looks like this Hissing Quagmire is getting ready to enter combat. Also getting a nice bonus from a Sylvan Advocate. So both Ishkana and the Hissing Quagmire are going to get in the red zone.
Last turn you attack the 3 spiders because they are not as good at blocking the copter as Ishkana. And this turn attack with Ishkana because it's better at attacking through copters than the spiders.
Wang was short land to be able to send in the other Hissing Quagmire, though we don't know what he actually has in hand, so potentially holding some removal spells.
Yeah, and Wang really in control of this game right now. He's playing both sides of the court. He's pressuring Osyp's life total while also being pretty well defended, which means that Osyp, especially as a beatdown deck, is just in a really tough spot.
All right, so Veteran Motorist. This will allow Osyp to scry, and he immediately bottoms both those cards. He's not interested in either, so looks like it's an uphill battle from here. The Motorist is going to be crewing one of those copters.
And one of the things we see sometimes, which we probably don't see here because Osyp doesn't have enough creatures, is crewing both copters without using the Motorist and then saving the Motorist to recrew them later. Yes,
yeah.
Exactly.
That is cute. It's interesting that it's not, you can crew things multiple times if there's no clause that says you can't recrew it. Although, technically speaking, it's kind of weird for creatures to jump into the copter after they've taken off.
Well, vehicles can stop and pick up more people.
That's true. The Grasp of Darkness is going to take care of that smuggler's copter, though.
Critically, before Osyp gets to attack and loot even.
Vehicle number 2 does manage to get in. And a mountain is discarded for Osyp. Sitting at a precarious 10 life total at this point.
And then the natural block here would be to triple block the smuggler's copter with spiders. 1/2s are pretty hard to kill. Not a whole lot goes wrong, but Osyp does then have the Selfless Spirit or potentially a removal spell in hand.
I think Wang decides that he really does not care very much about this smuggler's copter, so he's just going to take the damage.
And a reason to do that, even though normally you'd see the spiders jump in the way, is that Ishkana, providing the reach in the form of burn, she does have an activated ability, which we've seen happen numerous times this tournament, more than most tournaments. And Wang can pay 7 mana to make Osyp lose 4 life if he keeps all his spiders in play, and Osyp's only at 10.
All right, so let's see what Osyp can follow up with.
You got to exchange a mountain for something. We'll see if it's good enough to turn this around, even though he's in a bit of trouble.
Well, Declaration in Stone. Oh, targeting the Sylvan Advocate?
Yeah, and it's tough because Declaration in Stone is among the better draws that Osyp could have drawn, but he has so many good targets. I mean, all 3 spider tokens, Ishkana, Sylvan Advocate. Part of the reason to take Sylvan Advocate is because Sylvan Advocate represents 8 power. It's 4/5 plus the 2 Hissing Quagmires could be another 8.
It is unfortunate, though, because he ends up giving Wang a clue as well, and had he targeted the spiders, he wouldn't get that added benefit. But he's really on the back pedal here. Clue being sacrificed, and it looks like Wang not only has drawn a removal spell for this turn, but he's got a... Well, he has a lot of options.
Yeah, I think I saw Kalitas lurking in hand, and if that's the case, then Murder plus Kalitas just means that Osyp is going to be under a lot of pressure, and Wang is going to be able to expand his board dramatically.
Yeah, indeed, and that is exactly what he drew from the clue. Kalitas, Trader of Get, making an appearance for Wang, and we still have a murder in hand.
Pairings for the next round will be going up shortly.
I think it's coming down now. All right, yes, so murder, targeting that selfless spirit. Osip's going to sacrifice it in response. Spirit becomes a zombie.
And now Wang really just has to figure out, like, do I have to leave any blockers back for Smuggler's Copter? What's the danger of me taking 4 here? You know, one of the features of these red-white decks is, despite being an aggressive red deck back on the format, there's not that much actual face burn. Incendiary Flow is basically the only card you see commonly played, and Wang doesn't play those. So, or Osyp rather doesn't play those. So we're in a situation where Wang could even take this hit off Smuggler's Copter and still be pretty confident that he'd be able to untap and win the game next turn.
Yeah, and he decides he cannot. So Wang Yichen up a game here in the semifinals at GP Providence. Looks like Ishkana was able, and the whole game turned around when Ishkana actually came down. We just see how powerful that card is against decks that are trying to go wide, such as vehicles.
Yeah, and Wang didn't play Ishkana for multiple turns. In one of those turns, he didn't even use his mana at all. And his reward was waiting and getting 3 extra spiders, which worked out quite well for him. I think if had he run out Ishkana as 5 mana 3/5, not exactly the most constructed playable of cards, then it would have been a little tougher. And I think it's difficult to pass the turn without playing a 5-drop, but in this case, it worked out really well.
Yeah, he showed a lot of patience in that game, and it really paid off. And if you think about it from his perspective, too, if you have something like play Ishkana and then Osyp just Declarations in Stone, he's probably just dead.
And when you spend 5 mana and your opponent spends 2 and already has a board presence, it is pretty tough to come back from that.
Specifically Ishkana, since it can block the Smuggler's Copters, because if, there could have been a lot of other creatures like Kalitas can block a lot of these other things, but Smuggler's Copters are pretty evasive. Looking at these 2 decks post-board, Luis, who do you think it favors?
Well, Osyp does get to bring in a little bit more removal, some Sky Whaler Shot, Stasis Snare, potentially Sky Sovereign, Console Flagship, and we've seen him side in Gideon, Alav Zendikar, and Chandra Torch of Defiance. We saw actually Osyp defeat John Stern in one of the final Swiss rounds using a combination of Gideon and Chandra. So I imagine that he's interested in those cards.
Okay.
And if he can afford to, making it so he has fewer 1-toughness creatures to get killed by Liliana would be nice, because that is just a big drawback of Osyp's deck.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense.
On the other side, Jackie has access to Appetite for the Unnatural, which we've seen various black-green players use to destroy Smuggler's Copter, Wang. And he also has potentially Flaying Tendrils. This is one of those funny sideboard situations where Flaying Tendrils would be good against Osyp's main deck, and Wang has incentive to bring it in because of that.
Yes.
But the way Osyp sideboards actually might make Flaying Tendrils just not very good. If Osyp sides out Toolcraft Exemplar and 2 of the Selfless Spirits, and Wang sides in Flaying Tendrils, all of a sudden Wang is siding in a card that's just not good against Osyp's deck, despite it being good against Osyp's deck that he saw in the first game.
That he saw in the first game. One of the better articles, I forget who wrote this, but
if it was one of the better articles, I would assume.
It was yours, right?
I was going to say Apollo Vitor Domidarosa, but that's all right.
All right.
Continue.
PV does actually write very good articles. That aside, though, one of the things that they were talking about is how you have to be careful, because when you're bringing in cards from your sideboard, you have to consider that your sideboard cards never see their main deck. And that is exactly the situation here, right? You can bring something like Flaying Tendrils, which looks amazing pre-board, and then you think about it post-board, and you're like, actually, this card's just really bad. And even if they change potentially for game 3, it could potentially be good again, or it could also be bad again.
I think that it might actually have been Paulo, by the way.
Was it? All right.
So I do think that it is important to keep in mind what your opponent is doing and what they're thinking, because I've actually seen this many times where someone in Wang's position, the control deck, boards against the aggro deck a bunch of anti-aggro cards, and then the aggro deck boards in Planeswalkers, like Osyp has here, and higher curve cards which give the aggro deck more reach, and then you end up with a mismatch where you boarded in Galvanic Bombardment and they boarded in Gideon, and you're just looking at these 1-mana removal
oh my god,
spells.
what do I do with this?
Yeah. So it is sideboarding is a very difficult aspect of Magic to master, and it is very, very easy to put yourself in a position where you actually sideboarded cards to make your deck worse. So
Yeah.
I've definitely been there myself. And so it also depends too, because let's say these players sideboard. Let's say this happens, right? I don't know how Wang is going to sideboard.
Of course.
Let's say he does side in removal and Osyp sides in Planeswalkers, and Osyp wins game 2.
Mm-hmm.
And going into game 3, it's not cut and dry. Osyp might then lower his curve again under the assumption that Wang is then going to side as if he was playing against Planeswalkers. So it ends up with this kind of like dance where both players want to be one level ahead of their opponent, not 2 levels ahead, not one level behind.
Well, it's like a Princess Bride sort of situation, right? You just like next level each other to some extent, and you don't know at what point you're just going a little bit too deep.
Yeah, but in the Princess Bride, he kind of cheated. He was just immune, and they were
Sure.
both poisoned.
All right. I feel like I've seen something very similar with control decks, conversely, where a lot of decks will bring out all the remover against a control deck because, like, hey, I have no targets. What can I do with these things? And so instead, the control decks just bring like a couple of creatures that are okay, But if the other decks took out all the removal, then what can you do? And then suddenly the control deck just actually runs away with it because the other decks just have no way to deal with like the random one creature that they brought in.
Yeah, we actually saw exactly that happen numerous times at Pro Tour Kaladesh, where Pierre Dagen, the eventual top 8 competitor, had a creatureless deck game 1, boarded in 4 copies of Niblis of Frost,
Yes.
and all of his opponents had boarded out all their removal. And he just dominated the game with Niblis of Frost. So that's exactly the same thing. People take out removal against control decks, and then control decks bring in creatures.
Yeah.
It's like the opposite of what's happening here, where the aggro decks bring in Planeswalkers. So sideboarding is awesome. It's a very intricate, dance, and it's pretty cool seeing like the different ways you can take advantage of this kind of like information asymmetry where your opponent does not know what you're doing.
Yeah, and those Niblis of Frost games were so impressive too because these decks would have 3 Metalwork Colossus and just a Niblis of Frost kind of like holding back the entire team and actually managing to chip in there for like 4 or 5 at a time.
Yeah, Niblis of game plays because it was actually just game.
It looks like Osyp's going to be taking a mulligan here. He's going down to 5.
Yeah, so that's not a great spot to be in. Let me explain why. It's
All right,
because
let's hear the expert level analysis.
Osip's going to only have 5 cards in his starting hand.
Okay.
And Wang's going to have 7.
Okay.
That's actually it.
All right,
That's the whole that's the whole breakdown. So kind of unfortunate. I mean, we always, from the booth, all we're hoping for is great games. And mulliganing to 5 makes it tough, though. Earlier in this tournament, Ben Stark actually lost to a mulligan to 4.
Did he really?
Yeah, Ben.
Wait, was this on camera?
I don't know if it was on camera.
Okay.
It was not one of the rounds we covered, but Ben actually ended up losing. I believe it was to Jarvis Yu.
What was the hand?
I don't know what happened, but I know Ben lost to Mol to 4. Ben was pretty happy about it too when he was telling me.
Because he was like, I'm not even mad. I'm impressed.
No, he was mad.
All right, there you go.
So we'll see what Osyp ends up with here.
All right, Osyp, 1-time playable 5. It looks like there are no lands in that hand. Oy!
All right.
What is the lowest mulligan that you've ever won with?
I've won on a mulligan to 3 before.
All right, what was it?
This is going to sound really bad, but the 3 cards I had in my opening hand were Plains, Kakusho the Evening Star. This
My
is the
God.
4 black 5/5 Flying Dragon from Champions of Kamigawa, and Glacial Ray, 1 in a red, deal 2 damage.
How did you win that game?
Your
opponent mulligan to 1?
Oh, geez. Speaking of mulliganing to 3.
No.
Well, it was a sealed deck, and I was playing 3 colors, but my opponent kept like a 2-lander and ended up
And
not
just got-
hitting, and I drew a bunch of lands in a row. So,
It's not even like you had that much stuff to start out with, though. I guess
Yeah.
eventually you get to Kakusho.
so what's Osip's optimal 3-card hand? I guess it's like land, Thraben Inspector, land, and then draw a Veteran Motorist on turn 2.
All right, so it looks like he has chosen to keep this, but down and on a mulligan. And so he knows exactly what's on top, so he flips the Needle Spires, and it looks like it is a Thraben Inspector. Okay, so he couldn't play it on turn 1 because he had that mountain, but knew that Needle Spires was on top, so does provide a clue. But he's down to 2 cards in hand, and Wang's going to follow up with a Vessel of Nascency. Dead weight to kill that poor Thraben Inspector.
That's kind of just rubbing it in at this
Yeah,
point.
it kind of is. It looks like he's drawing a Smuggler Copter for this turn, so he's going to opt to crack that clue and draw a card. He does not find a land.
And part of the reason Osyp cracked a clue there instead of playing Smuggler's Copter is that he's got Gideon in hand and just wants to not miss a land drop that turn. And also, he doesn't have anything to crew the Copter with anyway, presumably. So, did not work out for Osyp, but when you start with 3 cards in your hand, you don't have high hopes.
So Wang, after cracking that Vessel of Nascency, is going to choose that Hissing Quagmire. And Sylvan Advocate looking really good here, especially against a Mana Screwed opponent. All you want to do is be aggressive and just like, finish the game fast. Don't give him any time to draw out of it.
Yeah, most cards look pretty good against opponents who mold to 3.
All right.
Your actual point is correct, though, that as opposed to my nonsense point,
yes,
which is that aggressive creatures are good when your opponent has mulligan. You punish them for having slow starts, which mulligans often are.
It looks like he might have done another Smuggler's Copter for this turn.
And Osyp has some removal spells here. He can kill Sylvan Advocate with Harness Lightning or Declaration in Stone, but it's just not the way he's going to win this game. I mean, he might be forced to, but it's just not. He's not making any progress.
Indeed. So the Harness Lightning does manage to stop the Sylvan Advocate in its tracks, but let's see what Wang follows up with. Okay, traverse the Ulvenwald.
And I think he's getting a land so he can play as Kalitas this turn anyway, but given he's got Vessel, Deadweight, creatures, and lands, I don't think he actually even had Delirium before that.
All right, so that swamp does come down, and so does Kalitas. Okay, Osyp found a Plains off the top, gets to kill that Kalitas, and provides Wang with that clue. So Osyp continuing to hold on here.
He's preventing himself from dying, but when you're declarationing and applying 0 pressure, the card really isn't that impressive. Where it's great is when you're attacking your opponent, they tap out for something, you go declaration, continue attack, and they don't have time to use the clue. When you're just trading 1 for 1 and you started 4 cards down, it's just not the way.
So Appetite of the Natural is going to take down that Smuggler's Copter.
Which I still maintain doesn't sound all that appetizing.
It sounds disgusting, no. Yeah, and look at how aggressive Wang is being here, attacking with a Hissing Quagmire.
Which, I mean, it's good news for Osyp in that Wang isn't adding to his board. It's bad news for Osyp, and that just means Wang has 5 removal spells in hand. So it's going to be tough for Osyp to win this game, even though Wang isn't really advancing his board. He's just tapping 4 mana to deal 2 damage.
All right, Smuggler's Copter is something that can dodge removal since it's not a creature right now. Let's see what Wang follows up with. Another Appetite. These Copters are just so delicious. Hissing Quagmire getting in there again. All right, and we're going to see a pass back to Osyp.
You know, one way Osyp could actually get back into this?
This is the third. We just keep seeing the same turn over and over again.
It's not drawing a 3rd Smuggler's Copter, unfortunately, is it?
Yes.
Is if he draws a 4th land and he can play a Gideon, and if Wang has just all spot removal, Gideon doesn't actually get the job done. But I still think that's going to be tough.
It does look like Wang takes that Sylvan Advocate. And he makes an appearance on the battlefield. Did he find the land? Doesn't look like it. He's just going to have to pass back.
And if Osyp sided in Skywhaler's shot and has a shot to kill the Sylvan Advocate, things might not be completely over, but it does not look easy for him to win this game without that.
And these 2 Hissing Quagmires coming in, and look, Skywhaler's shot does take down the Sylvan Advocate, so it will save him a lot of life, but still taking 4 damage from these Hissing Quagmires. It looks like Osyp has drawn a Depala Pilot Exemplar for the turn.
And still not really what he's looking to hit here.
He is going to crew and get to loot. Pitching a Veteran Motorist.
And Osyp found a mountain off of that, so he will be able to play Gideon next turn. But the Hissing Quagmire aggro has actually been fairly effective, and it's going to be, it's possible that one can just attack for 4 with 2 Quagmires, grasp to remove a blocker next turn, and finish the game with Hissing Quagmire.
It looks like this time only 1 Hissing Quagmire is going to be getting in. This drops Osyp down to 6.
Wang leaving up multiple copies of Grasp of Darkness, it looks like. Or potentially other removal spells. I mean, his hand is all removal.
No, he's just going to go ahead and grasp up the Pala right now. Not even give Osyp a chance to untap. Osyp just checking what lands are still left on top for Wang. So what can he do if he plays just Gideon here?
So Gideon make a knight, could crew the copter and attack, and Wang could attack back with 2 Quagmires to drop those 2 or to kill the Gideon. You could also go Gideon make a knight go, which leaves you essentially 1 blocker at a time, but 2 blockers total, because if Wang goes to kill the knight, you can then crew the copter, and that does protect you fairly well from the hissing Quagmires. It's still a bit of a desperation move here, but given the relative life totals, I like staying back.
He also found a Needle Spire, so he is continuing to make some land drops here.
The problem is, now that Osip's made those land drops, he just doesn't have very many cards in his hand.
Yes.
He traded 1 for 1 or 0 for 1 in the case of Declaration, and ended up in a spot where he's just not doing that much.
Traverse the Ulven Wall, then the players are counting to make sure that there is Delirium.
I believe he's past Delirium at this point with an instant sorcery land, creature, and enchantment. So Emrakul would cost 8 unless there's a Planeswalker hiding in there, but I think even if it costs 8, Wang actually has enough to just cast Emrakul here. So Hissing Quagmire did a lot of work, but in the end, it's really just going to be the Emrakul.
And this just might seal the deal. Emrakul, the Promised End, making an appearance, and this is Osip's turn, being controlled by Wang. Looks like a Mount is a draw for the turn.
It's so brutal, too, because one can just scry something bad to the top if he hits at least 1 bad card and, just lock up the game that way. Because all he needs to do is attack once with Emrakul. In addition, one can Emblem Gideon, send in like a Smuggler's Copter, or just send in the Knight and kill it with Emrakul.
Yeah, so it looks like the first thing that's happening is a Gideon emblem. This does remove the Gideon from play. Looks like the Knight is going to be crowing that Smuggler's Copter. All right, so he's going to discard the Veteran Motorist. Emrakul jumps in front of the Smuggler's Copter, and now Osyp left with 2 lands in hand. Let's see what the straw step is.
If it's not Declaration in Stone, Emrakul is going to fly over for lethal.
It looks like it might have just been a land.
Like Depalo Pilot Exemplar, perhaps? But either way, it's it does not look like it's a Declaration.
It does not seem like it kills Emrakul. That's the biggest problem here.
Yeah, not a whole lot does.
It is a Depala. Past the turn, he has nothing here. Wang plays a land. Animates Grasp of Darkness, killing Depala. Murder, killing the other creature. I still had all these.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
And Emrakul gets through for the last points of damage, and Wang Yichen moves on to the finals. Congratulations to him, and we're sorry to Osyp. The mulligan to 3 is never really how you want to finish your tournament.
It is not, but Osyp can take solace in the fact that he's qualified and won a flight to the next Pro Tour.
Yeah.
So he's back on the Pro Tour, and kind of cool to get to see him there. Osip's a really funny guy, and he always makes things more interesting.
He's an old school pro, right?
He is. He won Pro Tour Venice in 2003. He has 3 Pro Tour top 8s. And he was one of the players who was like, he had stopped playing a little bit before I started.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I definitely knew who he was. I read a lot of
When
Magic
you had
coverage.
started?
Yeah.
Around what time was this?
I don't remember when he stopped playing in Pro Tours actively, but I think it was in the mid-2000s. So, I mean, he won the Pro Tour in 2003, so it was at some point after that.
All right, let's speak over to our other semifinal match. This is going to be Seth Manfield versus Jackie Wong. And Seth, as we've seen before, is piloting Black-Green Delirium. This is basically a control deck. Fighting against Black-Red Zombie Madness, a deck that we haven't seen very much of in the feature match area this weekend. And there's kind of a bit of a mess over on the graveyard on the other side of the battlefield, but...
Well, it's called Zombie Madness. It's not called
It's true.
Zombie Tidiness.
Zombie Orderly.
Yeah. Well, zombie orderly would be like a medical assistant of some kind.
All right.
Seth is up a game right now, but Jackie looks like he's in a pretty commanding position because he's got the 3 spirits, presumably from Haunted Deads that have come back, and then a Distended Mindbender, which I believe is being held back by Hissing Quagmire, with Jackie waiting to strike when he's got a removal spell for the Quagmire.
All right, so it looks like Pick the Brain is going to take care of that unlicensed disintegration, but the Scrap Heap Scrounger is making an appearance on the other side of the battlefield.
And we'll find out now if there's any prized amalgams hiding in there.
Another Scrounger. Looks like no amalgams.
But another Haunted Dead.
How do you think cards like Scrap Heap Scroungers match up against decks like Seth's?
If Seth has Kalitas in play, not well, because Kalitas is great against the graveyard-based cards like Scrap Heap Scrounger.
Sure.
But if Seth doesn't have that, Scrap Heap Scrounger is quite good. I mean, Seth's going to use Grasp of Darkness or Natural State or trade a Quagmire for Scrap Heap Scrounger. They'll just come back like what happened here.
All right, so Jackie lining up some attacks here. Looks like a number of them are going to be, yes. These creatures are getting real aggressive. Hissing Quagmire is getting animated, but it meets a sad fate. And Wacky is going to, sorry. Jackie is going to force a 3rd game here in the semifinals. All right, Luis, taking a look at these decks post-board. What do you think happens?
Well, one thing that was interesting that we saw is that Seth boarded in Pick the Brain. So Pick the Brain is not a card you expect to board in against aggro decks very often, but the reason Seth did is it's a way for him to exile cards out of Jackie's hand and potentially Jackie's graveyard. So if Seth's able to hit Delirium. So being able to interact with a zone, the graveyard that it's difficult to interact with is important. So that part is kind of funny. Flaying Tendril is also a pretty good pick here. It can exile the Scrap Heap Scroungers and Haunted Deads that come back. Can't quite hit Prized Amalgam, but you can combine Flaying Tendrils with another removal spell. So like you Tendrils away a Scrounger and then kill the Amalgam and it also gets exiled.
Sure.
So it is able to give Seth a few answers here. On the other side, Distended Mindbender, we saw one in play, and I think in general, Jackie's going to be very happy with that card. Seth just has a lot of cards in his hand. He's a control deck. He's going to have more cards in hand than most of the decks Jackie expected to face in the Swiss. So having Distended Mindbender to reach out and pluck the good ones is awesome.
Especially with cards such as Emrakul, because that kind of card provides such inevitability for Seth. If he's ever able to, be able to nab that one, that seems pretty big game.
Transgress the Mind, also a card that Jackie could use in order to disrupt Seth's plans. You don't want to go super deep on hand disruption. If you board in like 7 hand disruption spells and then your opponent ends up without cards in their hand because you drew on 2 of them already, you don't really want to draw a 3rd, for example. But in general, having a couple of them is pretty good against these black-green decks.
Where do you think you draw the line of having too much discard? Because that is a problem, right? You draw a discard spell like in the middle of the game and you're like, well, my opponent has nothing in hand. What am I supposed to do?
Yeah, I would say around 5 or 6 discard spells. I'm not usually comfortable playing like 8, for example. I've played decks with 4 Inquisition of Kozilek and 4 Thoughtseize and just felt like it was too much.
In Modern or something like that? Sure. Like an Absent style deck?
Yeah, Alzon is actually the deck, exactly like I was thinking of. Collective Brutality, another card Jackie has access to that kind of fills those roles, but given Seth doesn't have very many good targets for the -2/-2 effect, he's got Grimflare, but Grimflare, once it hits Delirium, is immune to it, so I wouldn't be super excited about boarding in a bunch of Collective Brutalities, especially when you have a decent amount of removal spells competing for those slots.
Grand Prix Providence in our last booster draft of Grand Prix Providence.
Something interesting here, too, is that the players are playing post-board already, but they actually have taken quite a bit of time boarding again. So this is what we were discussing before, is how much do you change from game 2 to game 3, and how much does that affect what you want to change from game 2 to game 3?
I think that these matchups, you're not going to see quite as much of the juking that we could have seen in the Osyp
Nice
versus Wang
jukes.
Yichen matchup. So Seth kind of knows what Jackie's plan is, and Jackie knows what Seth's plan is, but there's still room to tailor your deck and to make some adjustments. So I'm not surprised that the player's boarded. The other key is that if you don't touch your sideboard between games, your opponent knows you didn't change anything.
Yeah, of course.
So you're giving up information for free there. I'm not going to say I never do that because sometimes I'm just lazy, but I think in general these players are not wanting to give up free information.
AKA viewers at home, do not try this at home.
Or in this case, do try this. You should pretend like you're sideboarding, even if you're not.
I'm saying do not try what you're doing at home.
That's generally good advice, yes.
It looks like Jackie might have a last-minute change of heart. This match matters a lot. Definitely want to make sure you sideboard it correctly.
Game 3 for the finals of the Grand Prix here. Of course, Wang Yichen waiting to see who he faces in the finals. I don't actually know which matchup he would prefer to play because there's the black-green mirror where both of you have actually pretty similar deck lists versus playing against the more aggressive red-black deck. The funny thing is, if Jackie Wang defeats Seth, that kind of implies that Wang doesn't really want to play against Jackie, but you might still think it's a good matchup.
All right, so it looks like that Jackie's hand started out with seemed like not enough lands, but drew like 2 at the very end. So looks like both players have kept, and we are underway. Seth Manfield kicking things off with a Vessel of Nascency.
Yeah, Jackie's hand seems solid. He's got a Lightning Axe as an early discard outlet, and I think he actually would hope that Seth plays like a Grim Flare so he can use this Lightning Axe because he's got Prized Amalgam and he's got Scrap Heap Scrounger. He just needs a way to get them into the graveyard. I think he also has a Smuggler's Copter, though.
Indeed. So down comes Smuggler's Copter for Jackie, and Seth going to be cracking that Vessel of Nascency. Let's see. Ooh, so Flaying Tendrils is revealed as a inclusion from the sideboard here.
Unfortunately for Seth, all that does is show Jackie the removal spells he's got and just give him the option of picking up a land.
Yep.
Spot left in our last booster draft and 1 spot left in our last.
A little bit unfortunate, but Seth will be able to take that forest.
Sitting in one of these spots, the last spot in the booster draft for the wacky draft. Please come up to registration and register.
Another advantage of Scrap Heap Scrounger, very easy to cast. It can pilot a Smuggler's Copter regardless of what your mana situation is.
All right, so Seth Manfield with Pick the Brain.
And he's got Enchantment, instant, Sorcery Land. He actually
just
hit
hit
Delirium.
with the first Vessel.
Yeah, so he gets to now look at Jackie's hand and exile all copies from the deck of whichever card he chooses.
And there's 2 here that are very tempting. The Amalgam is one of them, the Scrap Heap Scrounger being another one.
Certainly both keys to this deck. One advantage of taking the Scrap Heap Scrounger is that it would then potentially strand the Amalgam with no way to come back because Scrounger and Haunted Dead are the ways that Jackie has to bring Amalgam back from the graveyard. Of course, if you take Amalgam, then you just reduce the power level of Jackie's deck significantly because no matter what Seth takes, Jackie, thanks to that Crypt Breaker draw, will be able to play a creature and pilot the Smuggler's Copter next turn.
Yeah, so this Vessel of Nascency, being able to hit Delirium was huge for Seth.
Yeah, you don't see very many turn 3 Pick the Brains with Delirium, but Seth managed to get there.
What can Jackie do if all the Amalgams are gone from his deck?
He's still able to play a grindy game with Scrap Heap Scrounger and Smuggler's Copter and Haunted Dead, especially if he can draw a Distended Mindbender. But it does make his deck a lot more explosive. He's less likely to finish Seth off quickly here.
So it looks like he is choosing the Scrounger. So in this scenario, Luis, how do you navigate this game from now on if you're Jackie?
Well, the place to start here would be to play Crypt Breaker, unless Jackie draws a different creature. But playing Crypt Breaker and attacking with the Smuggler's Copter is a great place to start because then you can discard this Prized Amalgam, which, remember, Jackie has no way to cast Prize Amalgam. This is not a Grixis deck. This is a red-black deck. None of his mana sources provide blue. He just has to discard Prized Amalgam to cards like Cryptbreaker or Smuggler's Copter in order to then bring it back from the graveyard. So priority number 1 is trading in that Prized Amalgam for a real card.
The other added benefit of Pick the Brain here is it'll allow Seth to take a look at all of Jackie's decks. So now he has perfect information on how Jackie has chosen the sideboard. Not that they're going to another game after this. It's not like the Pro Tour, but he can navigate the rest of this game much better.
And knowing whether Jackie, how many discard spells he has, whether, what kinds of threats that you could deal with, what kind of creature removal Jackie has in his deck is all very important. So Seth getting to know that information is critical.
Nice. So if you're interested in playing in our turbo draft, please come out to registration.
It looks like Jackie might have been listening to some music. Time to focus.
Every time I see someone listening to music at a Magic tournament, I just always assume it's Eye of the Tiger.
I mean, you gotta get pumped up somehow. It's a pretty good assumption. All right, so it looks like Jackie found a swamp off the top. So it looks like Cryptbreaker jumping into that copter.
That's probably not where Prized Amalgam goes.
There you go. So the Scroungers are out of the game. They are exiled, but the Amalgam does get to go to the graveyard. Looks like the follow-up is a Cathartic Reunion, discarding 2 lands.
Yeah, that's a pretty good play for Jackie. Just seeing 3 new cards. And between that and the Smuggler's Copter, he's doing all right here. If Seth has a removal spell for Cryptbreaker, he could actually strand Jackie with a Copter and nothing to pilot it, and that would be problematic because Jackie definitely needs to start applying pressure, and his hand has 3 removal spells. It's Lightning Axe, Unlicensed Disintegration, and Fiery Temper.
So Seth, ready to traverse the Ulvenwald, and Delirium is online, so let's take a look and see what he wants from his deck this time. It's a Hissing Quagmire.
You see that Traverse Ulvenwald has a star stamp on it. That means it was opened at a Pro Tour or Day 2 of a Grand Prix. A foil one even. How lucky.
So if you're Jackie and you know that Seth has Delirium but has chosen to go with a Hissing Quagmire this turn, what do you make of that?
It tells you 2 different things. One is presumably Seth wasn't going to make a land drop otherwise. The other is that Seth doesn't have a 3-drop to play. I mean, Seth could play an untapped 3rd land and play a 3-drop here, but knowing what I know right now, I would assume Seth doesn't have a 3-drop and doesn't have a land and just wants Quagmire, potentially leaving up Grasp. But one reason I would suspect Seth may not have Grasp is that Seth has incentive to kill the Cryptbreaker. That said, if Seth's not banking on Jackie having more creatures, then he might just want to use Grasp to kill the Copter anyway.
All right, so it looks like Fiery Temper being discarded to the Cryptbreaker, getting a zombie.
And a reason that Jackie would do that main phase is so he can pilot Smuggler's Copter.
And it looks like it was Natural State. All right, that takes down the Copter and a follow-up Cryptbreaker for Jackie.
And Natural State makes perfect sense because, again, Grasp Seth might have wanted to cast on Cryptbreaker. Natural State only hits Copter. So Seth saving that removal spell makes a lot of sense given the lines of play he made. Seth's in trouble, though. Jackie has 2 Cryptbreakers out. Jackie can start making zombies, then start tapping 3 zombies to lose a life and draw a card. So Cryptbreaker snowballs very, very quickly. And Jackie, if he wants, can actually just tap 4 mana, discard 2 cards, tap both Cryptbreakers, make 2 more zombies, then tap those 3 zombies immediately to one of the Cryptbreakers to lose a life and draw a card. And then all of a sudden, Seth's facing down a horde of zombies, and Jackie just is drawing 2-3 cards a turn.
It did seem like Seth started out with the exact kind of, the perfect start, right? Hitting Delirium immediately, pick the Brain to remove all the Scroungers, but this Cryptbreaker's doing solid work for Jackie.
Yeah, an unopposed Cryptbreaker is a very big threat. It's a little slow. I mean, that's one of the downsides of the card, but once it gets going, it's great.
All right, so it looks like Ishkana making an appearance for Seth, and Delirium is going to trigger these 3 spiders coming along with it.
Yeah, but this is one of those situations where Jackie just probably doesn't care about this Ishkanah very much. It's not fighting the battle in the front that Jackie cares about. Jackie's just getting to go off with Crypt Breakers here.
Yeah, and this is the first turn he's been able to.
And he's got removal spells in hand, so he's, I think, just not very concerned about how things are going.
First card drawn for Jackie. Now a draw for the turn, too.
And Jackie's found multiple prized amalgams now, too. So if Jackie's able to find a Haunted Dead and bring back these prized amalgams, then Seth's in even more trouble. And this is one of the disadvantages of the black-green deck. It's a great deck. 4 copies made top 8. It's hard to argue against that. But its answers need to line up well against the opponent's threats. And Seth having a natural state against a Crypt Breaker, I mean, he was able to kill the Copter, but right now Crypt Breaker's still going to take over the game, whereas Copter would be stopped by Ishkanah and the Spiders. So when you're a control deck and you can't kill the last threat standing, sometimes the aggro deck can still run away with the game. The game's certainly not over. A Flaying Tendrils and Seth's right back in it, but it's getting out of control quickly because Jackie is drawing cards and deploying threats every single turn.
All right, so let's see what this 3 mana is for. It looks like it's a Liliana, the Last Hope.
Well, that is a start, because Liliana can start picking off Crypt Breakers here.
So the first Crypt Breaker, the one being targeted by Liliana, is going to make a zombie on the way out, discarding the amalgam. So as soon as Jackie's able to trigger this, we'll be buying back some amalgams. But for now, this Crypt Breaker is going to be dead. And there it hits the bin. New zombie making an appearance. And Jackie still has the ability to keep drawing cards here if he wants to. He has to figure out a way to deal with Liliana, though.
Ishkanah plus Liliana is a good combination because that gives Seth a way to answer Crypt Breaker while also protecting Liliana. Because Ishkanah can't answer Crypt Breaker, and Liliana, of course, by herself would get eaten by a horde of zombies, which is actually just very unflavorful. Liliana's supposed to control the horde of zombies.
It's not as unflavorful as the multiple times that we've seen Liliana and Emrakul on the same side of the battlefield. Like, that's strictly worse.
I suppose that's true, but yet they always go in the same deck. So Jackie deciding now whether he wants to activate Crypt Breaker to make a zombie or just tap 3 zombies to draw a card. He can start by tapping the 3 non-Crypt Breaker zombies to draw a card and then has a little bit more information as to what to discard. One reason he might not want to is if he's going to cast Unlicensed Disintegration this turn, he's just not going to use the Crypt Breaker, but he still can draw an extra card if he likes.
Would you be interested in doing that if you think there's a way that you can break through that Ishkanah this turn? I mean, you want to keep that Crypt Breaker. It seems so crucial to your plan.
Oh, it looks like the priority was on Seth, and yes, I would definitely like to draw extra cards here.
Yes. All right, and Jackie's going to be discarding that mountain. So drawing an extra card, making another zombie. We're going to see an untap and draw. And it looks like Jackie does have a couple of removal spells in hand, that Unlicensed Disintegration, a Lightning Axe as well.
And he drew a Distended Mindbender, which actually, since he doesn't have a Haunted Dead yet, can't easily emerge. So Haunted Dead is really the card that Jackie would be interested in drawing here, because it would, again, get back both of those prized amalgams. Another thing that Jackie can do is he can start drawing cards with Zombie's main phase to try to look for more cards to play here. Because, let's say Jackie goes Unlicensed Disintegration or Ishkanah, attack Liliana. I guess he could go Unlicensed Disintegration, kill Ishkanah, Lightning Axe, kill one of the spider tokens, and then attack Liliana with 4 zombies. And that would kill Liliana. So that is a way to keep Crypt Breaker alive, even though you don't end up tapping your zombies to draw a card this turn.
It is somewhat aggressive. It's a line that kind of forces you to spend a lot of cards from your hand, but I mean, we keep seeing how important this Crypt Breaker is to this plan overall. Looks like Jackie is going to decline any attacks and pass it back to Seth.
And this gives Jackie a couple options. One is Seth's certainly going to go after Crypt Breaker or Liliana, at which point you get to draw a card, and then you can decide whether you want to make more zombies or hopefully find Haunted Dead to discard to Crypt Breaker here.
Yeah, so it looks like 3 the non-Crypt Breaker zombies are going to be tapping here to draw another card. And with this information, let's see what Jackie chooses to do with a Crypt Breaker. Yes, it looks like he is going to be discarding a land, a swamp. And this swamp is going to provide a new zombie as well. And down goes a Crypt Breaker. So no more Crypt Breakers for Jackie. How does he want to navigate this game now that it seems like the biggest threat that he had has been taken care of?
Yeah, his game was looking a lot better when Jackie had 2 Crypt Breakers out. Liliana picking off both really tilts the scales back in favor of Seth. Jackie needs to find Haunted Dead, because then he can go like discard Haunted Dead to Lightning Axe, kill Ishkana, bring back Haunted Dead, bringing back 2 prized amalgams and try to just overrun Seth. Without a Haunted Dead, he's just got no way to bring back prized amalgam. And without that, it's going to be difficult to assemble enough power to take out Seth, because Ishkana does a fantastic job of providing this wall of spiders, as it were.
And Seth continuing to use that Traverse the Ulvenwald to get a swamp. And he's going to cast another Traverse. So Seth a little Traverse flooded, it seems.
The good thing about being Traverse flooded is you start just getting spells with them, and then it's great.
Such as Kalitas.
Kalitas looks like it could be good here, except for Seth doesn't know that Jackie is just sitting on a bunch of removal spells, so Kalitas may not end up doing everything Seth wants it to do.
So Kalitas does make an appearance. That does tap Seth out for this turn. It looks like Jackie might fire off that unlicensed disintegration, and down goes Kalitas. We're going to see an on top of all the zombies. And that Liliana still looking quite threatening.
Yeah, because now she's ticking up towards an ultimate. She can't kill anything anymore, but she can certainly get up to 7 loyalty, at which point she might be able to emblem.
All right, so Lightning Axe, discarding a land, takes care of that Ishkana, and in come all the zombies.
That actually ended up going all right for Jackie. The fact that Seth had to use 2 traverses that turn, and Unlicensed Disintegration plus Lightning Axe took out 2 of Seth's biggest creatures, means that now Seth either has to lose Liliana or lose 3 spiders and have Liliana go down to 1.
Yeah, this army of 2/2 zombies is looking pretty good against 1/2 spiders. Oh, it looks like they might be teaming up to take down one of the zombies. Yeah, and Liliana is now super dead. And only one of the spiders dies in that exchange.
I think Seth figured that Liliana was at the very worst or very best going down to 1 loyalty, so at which point all she could do was +1 on a zombie. She couldn't even -2, so he might as well just use the spiders to pick off a zombie and continue from there.
All right, so it looks like 2 spiders getting in there for Seth. And another 5 and another Ishkana brings another wall of spiders.
We actually almost had an issue in the feature match area where we were running out of spiders. Which to most people sounds like a good problem, but in this particular case, we needed more spider
Judges,
tokens.
stop. Why are you trying to get more spiders?
Yeah. But so many people were playing black-green, and they would just like take the spider tokens when they left that we had to get an emergency run of spider tokens.
Well, it looks like we have spider tokens plentiful as this Ishkana mothers this whole brood of I guess what is the brood of spiders? I don't even know what it is. But Emrakul is going to make an appearance.
And things are no longer looking great for the zombie horde. There's the Haunted Dead, many turns too late.
Oh, that is late to the party, my friend.
So now, Seth, he can eat 2 of the zombies for free off of Emrakul and Ishkana, or he can pilot the copter and eat that for free. He can also use his spiders to take down additional zombies, and then leave Jackie with basically not a whole lot. If he wants to, he could discard Haunted Dead and then play the swamp and just pass, and then Jackie couldn't get back Haunted Dead on his next turn without discarding Mindbender plus whatever he draws. Either way, Jackie's going to end up with very few cards in play and very few cards in hand, and Seth's still going to have Emrakul, Ishkana, and a bunch of spiders.
Yeah, and it looks like Seth has chosen to loot away that Distended Mindbender. That Ishkana is going to jump in front of the Smuggler's Copter, Emrakul in front of a zombie, some spiders are going to team up to take down some of the zombies, and Seth can assign damage in such a way where...
Yeah, he's forced to kill one of the spiders each, but he's still going to be able to keep almost his entire horde and leave Jackie with a lone haunted dead and
now
a
lightning axe.
Yeah. And between Emrakul attacks and Ishkanah's reach ability, and by reach I mean her 7-mana drain ability, I think Seth Manfield is going to be able to advance to the finals here. Though Jackie does have a lightning axe. If he kills Ishkanah, he takes 13 from Emrakul, blocks a spider, takes the last 2, goes from 15 to 0. Seth also has Hissing Quagmire if he needs it, so...
Yeah, it looks like Seth just has so many angles covered here. It's so impressive because we keep seeing these games, especially in black-green. Well, this is not a mirror, but in black-green mirrors where the games are just, you know, long and grindy, and then Emrakul comes out and just it's done.
Yeah.
The game's over.
Emrakul plays well in grindy games, but also ends them.
All right. So let's see what Jackie can do. He's just going to pass the turn back. And Seth Manfield could be a turn away here from being in the finals at GP Providence.
Seth Manfield going to win another Grand Prix?
I think he might win another Grand Prix. It could happen.
He's giving himself the opportunity to. He still has to get through Wang Yichen, but...
And another black-green mirror.
But finding himself in the finals.
And there's a handshake. Look at Seth. He's all business.
Yeah, he looks kind of
like,
excited.
all right,
and by that I mean he's like, all right, it's another Grand Prix. I guess it's time to make it to the final, see what I can do there. But I do know Seth actually does put a great value on winning. He just, while he's in the tournament mode, you know, he's very focused.
That is a game face. See, 2 seconds away, he's just going to put a near butt in and start listening to Eye of the Tiger. So, well, that is going to do it here for the semifinals at Grand Prix Providence. Tune back in for the finals.
Test drive the top standard decks from Pro Tour Kaladesh in the Pro Tour Gauntlet, happening now on Magic Online. For more information, visit mtgo.com.
Put your game to the test at a Grand Prix. These Magic celebrations are headlined by 2-day open tournaments with the best players in your region as well as top Magic pros from around the world. Find an upcoming Grand Prix near you at magic.wizards.com/Grand Prix.